Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you all to the Hindu analysis. And today we'll be discussing 7 to 8 important articles out of the Hindu newspaper, which deal with quite diverse topics. Now, today we had a tragic, you can say, a whole page on the tragic death of Ajit Pawar. But we have very interesting data with regards to voters, how voters behave and have been behaving. Then, a very interesting text and context article. This article is about the statutory status or the status of the ED per se. Thereafter, we'll talk about the EU India FTA and why is it so significant. And then small topics but interesting ones dealing with, for example, India Saudi Arabia, the IIP and its, you can say, growth projections, and the aircraft crash. We have a very interesting creative here, all the notable personalities who have died in an air crash, and thereafter two changes, one in the health ministry and thereafter from the government of India vis-a-vis green consent. So good evening to all of you, and remember that today we have a more prelims oriented, less mains oriented understanding, because the editorials itself were not very representative of what a UPSC aspirant should be going through. For example, with regards to the Chinese High Commissioner writing an article about the Chinese economy, it's a very indoctrinating type article, made no sense. Then there was a random article on India, its beauty, for example, by Shashi Tharoor. Again, not relevant for UPSC preparation. Okay? But I picked up data point and I picked up text and context. Two very important articles per se. Two very, very important. So if everybody's here, everybody's ready. Remember that the 17,999 offer will end in today evening at midnight, and use the code IS English. It is a guaranteed understanding that this price will not come back soon. You will also get CSC Assure with it. So I hope you will become a part of the Unacademy family using this offer and using the code IS English. Now, the first topic, the first topic, what it deals with is analyzing voter behavior between 2014, 2019, and 2024. Now, why is this important? Is because there is a lot of discussion, and as a UPSC aspirant, voter behavior is important for mains understanding, and generally the data can be asked or trends can be asked for the prelims examination. So we have to take out the relevant, you can say, details out of it and make sure that we're able to decode it in the best way possible. Now, here, the context for this is that 25th of January is National Voters Day. And on that day, Lok Niti and CSDS survey tried to understand women's participation, electoral turnout, and shifts in political autonomy. There are four heads under which the whole article is based on. We'll try to decode it. As always, I'll make a mind map for you which can summarize everything together. Now, the first thing which they talk about is voter turnout and what has been the trend generally. Now, with regards to voter turnout, 2014 66.44%, thereafter 67.40% in 2019, and then 66.10% in 2024. This is what this table also indicates. With regards to male and female, there is a very interesting trend wherein we are in the same, you can say, zone. We are between that 66 to 67% zone, that too across three general elections. So therefore, it shows a robust understanding, a robust mechanism, a robust electoral system where people want to be part of the voting system, of the electoral system per se. This is the first very important conclusion. A sustained willingness to be part of the electoral process. First. Second thing which it talks about is women's participation, which again is in a certain zone, 65.54, 65.78, and 67.18. Meaning from 65 it became 67, it came back to 65, which is again indicative of robustness and multiple very important concepts, which is women being a part of the electoral process itself is a very big thing. Their accessibility, the way administrative reforms are working, the way mobilization is happening with regards to their access to polling stations, and streamlining all of this has helped women be in the same zone as they are. We have not seen a decline per se from 2014 levels vis-a-vis 2024. In this decade, therefore, we have not seen a sustained decline or generic decline. This, why am I saying this to you? Is because in the examination, if the examiner says steady decline or exponential decline, the statement would be incorrect. Because yes, there has been an increase, very steady increase, but thereafter it adjusted at 65. There's no steady decline per se between this decade. It is in the same zone per se. So, see, we have now established through this survey two very interesting voter behavior. The first behavior is that that we have a 65, 66, 67% turnout, which is sustained, and mobilization is fine, and it is in a way in a certain bracket. There is a certain bracket which is continuously within the same bracket, which means that it is in a way robust. There is a robustness in the system. People still believe in the system per se. Second thing which we've established is with regards to female turnout. And this female turnout, because it is at the level of 66, 65, 67%, this shows again good accessibility, good mobilization, and good form of political consciousness. So women want to be part of the electoral system. At the same point of time, we have a good number turning out year on year or year on year with regards to the general election. So this is what this data per se points out with regards to table number one. This is how data point works. It analyzes data. So we have overall male, female, and in female we have a certain pattern which we established. Overall, we've understood. Till this point, everybody is with me. Four aspects pointed out. Two have been established. Anybody has any issue in understanding these two? Yes, sir. Everybody's on the same page with me. Okay. So, first set of data analyzed. Now, the second set of data is very interesting. The first point is how much confidence do the people have in the system or in the fact that their vote can change something? This is again a very interesting question, that when I vote, do I have any form of impact on the electoral politics or the democracy of India per se? And 56% of the people believe that I have an impact on the ballot, whilst 1 in 5 believe that there is no difference per se. But the point is, we'll do that. So don't worry. The simple point is that 56% of the people believe that their voting rights have an impact on the democracy of India. Thereafter, what is even more interesting is that people tend to believe that what behavior you show in the election is based on the fact that how does your family vote? How does your husband vote? How does your father vote? But as it turns out, the data shows that people are not taking the decision per se based on either gender or whatever be the matrix, are taking autonomous decisions. This is the data which is very interesting, wherein when it came to deciding based on rich, poor, male, female, the deciding factor was not the husband, not the family, but their own will. Meaning, in the same family, it could be that two people are voting for two different parties. This is quite interesting. So, therefore, what this survey establishes through all the data which is given, and that is what is important for UPSC, this survey has established four very important points. Please have to note them. You may need to use it in the examination. Also you can use it also generally. Now, the first thing which it establishes is we have a robust democracy where the turnout is in a certain percentage and it has sustained the test of time between three general elections. The first point which it says. Second point it says is that when it came to female participation, female participation was also in a very healthy range, wherein it remained in a certain bracket of 65 to 67%, which is indicative of accessibility, of administrative policy, and of general structures which allow these women to go and vote. The third thing which has been established is that 56% of the people believe that their vote counts and that their vote matters. This is very interesting, very important. That your vote matters. There's no disillusionment with the system per se. And fourth, even more interesting, is when it comes to voting behavior. When it comes to voting behavior is not dictated in most cases by family or spouse. Rather, it is an autonomous decision making by the person. Ultimately, Harsai, the participation of women has been constant. This is also constant. Very marginal increase per se. 1 and 3 are not the same concept. One talks about how many people are turning up to the elections. See, this is the data. This is the data, how many people ultimately turn up for the elections, meaning the basic voting percentage. The point with regards to third point is, do you believe that if you become part of the electoral process, your vote matters or not? The first point is hard data. Second point is perception. Meaning you could be voting but thinking like 29% believe there's no point in me in voting, though I still vote. It's about how much do you believe in the process. With regards to the EC coming under question, with regards to a lot of what we call as a lot of questions coming up with regards to electoral politics and electoral roles in that regard, people still believe that their vote matters. Avantika, understand one thing. This increase adjusts itself. 65 to 67 to 65. That is why overall in the decade, it is not very marginal increase remaining constant within the 65% concept. You can't say that it has increased between this period which we are trying to analyze. This mind map tries to explain to you the 4 points which this article is trying to argue. The article is trying to argue that people still believe in the voting process. People are turning out on a constant basis. Women have a constant participation in this process. And voting behavior for a very long time, people used to believe if the husband says something, if the family says, for example, we will vote for X party, the whole family used to do it. But in the voting station, in the polling booth, people do take decisions in a very, very autonomous way. And that is where the concept of the way this whole process is transparent, but your vote is secret. The idea of the secret ballot is also very, very important. VVPAT and everything else which has been introduced has induced further the idea of this, you can say, this behavior being autonomous. Meaning I can say something outside the polling booth, but I can go inside and do something else, and nobody would get to know that. So, in the examination, this is a type of question which can come in the mains GS paper 2 and it's based on the idea of how governance works. So, recent data has revealed a decade of continuity and gradual transformation in electoral behavior. Very, very relevant question. Very important question per se. Very, very important. So I hope that you will be able to answer it. If you have not gone through this session, if you have no idea of this article itself, you will not be able to answer this question. Because if you don't understand what is the survey trying to say over overall decade behavior, you'll not be able to understand per se. Are we clear about this? Yes? Sorted. If we are, then we'll move to the second topic. Yes, sir. Simple, straightforward article has a lot of fodder for mains examination. Right? Okay. Now, the second article has two parts. Static and a specific case. What happened in Kerala? And static is with regards to writs. The authority is Lok Niti along with CSDS. Lok Niti, CSDS. You may not have been in the beginning. CSDS plus Lok Niti is the data provider of this. Okay. Now, what we'll do is we'll first analyze the static and then we'll go into the specific case. If I have to give you a bird's eye view of this article, there's a major debate which is now there in the Supreme Court. The High Court, Kerala High Court has already established it. But with regards to the Supreme Court, there's a very interesting question which has been raised. The Enforcement Directorate, ED, used for political purposes also, for money laundering is basically it established under FEMA, which is Foreign Exchange Management Act. And the concept of the main role of ED nowadays is to stop money laundering, aggressive tax planning, and ED plays a very important role in that. Now, ED was created through an act. So, with regards to how ED is seen, this is the question in the Supreme Court. The government would argue, and the ED would argue, that it is a statutory body created through an act, whilst states are arguing that it is only an operationalized department of the union government. This is the fundamental question. Now, where does this writ concept come? The status of the either being a statutory body or being a department of the government of India would then decide the jurisdicted identity, the jurisdic identity of ED, thereby establishing if it can ask for using the articles of the constitution a writ to be introduced or exercised. So the context here is very interesting. The context is Enforcement Directorate looking for constitutional remedy. The Kerala High Court has argued against the wishes of the Kerala government that yes, ED is a statutory body. Therefore, it has under Article 226 the right to ask for a writ jurisdiction over something. It can move for a writ within the High Court's jurisdiction. Now, not assuming that you understand what is writ per se, let's try to establish that. Article 32 of the Constitution and Article 226 of the Constitution gives the Supreme Court and the High Court what is called as exclusive powers to the Supreme Court, and not it is not an it's not exclusive, it's a certain power which is original, not exclusive to the Supreme Court, but the High Court also practices it. Now, under that, English common law provides the concept of writs to establish what is called as extraordinary remedies when it comes to the process of legal remedies and sovereignty. Now, the constitution provides you with 5 writs. standard polity static. Habeas corpus, which is release a person who has been unlawfully detained. Mandamus, which is compel a public authority to perform a statutory or public duty. Prohibition, which would be restraining a lower court from acting beyond its authority. Certiorari, which is squash an order of a lower court vis-a-vis a tribunal for lack of jurisdiction. And quo warranto, which would be with regards to legality of a person claiming to have public office. But by what warrant you are doing this? Quo warranto, habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari. Now, these five are available to you visa 32 and 226. But as I said, the Supreme Court is not the one which exclusively has this jurisdiction, because Article 32 allows Supreme Court with the primacy of enforcing the fundamental. But Article 226 also vests this power to the High Court, not just for fundamental rights, but for any other purposes per se with regards to legal rights and administrative action. This means that the court has a discretionary power to also say that we don't need a writ petition because there are other remedies also available. What I'm trying to establish to you is that Article 32 and 226 has created a writ, you can say, structure or jurisdiction. Within that, Article 32 is the Supreme Court's jurisdiction, 226 is of the High Court. However, when it comes to Supreme Court, it is more 32 is about enforcement of fundamental rights. 226 goes beyond fundamental, and that is where it has other purposes also. That is why Kerala High Court comes into court. Now, under Article 361, writ of mandamus cannot be used for president or governor for performing a duty under the office. At the same point of time, writ is not ordinarily used against private individuals until unless it has been established that the state has in a way colluded with a private entity, thereby violating a constitutional provision or the statutory provision of the you can say person concerned. So this is the order, this is the static portion of this topic, wherein we have tried to establish what is the writ jurisdiction, what is writ, what is 32, what is 226, and what is the concept which are available within 32 and 226. Remember, 226 goes beyond not only enforcement of fundamental rights, it goes beyond that. It goes to other purposes. Therefore, legal rights is also something which is under the purview of the High Court, which the Supreme Court does not have. So in a way, fundamental rights is something as an original and exclusive thing which the Supreme Court would work with. But the High Court does not only work with the fundamental rights, it moves beyond it. I'm not using the word exclusive, original, vis-a-vis constitutionally. I'm using them as generic words because I know you will say, sir, but there is a certain jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, which is, for example, center-state relationship. That is an exclusive and original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. I'm not using it in that way. Vis-a-vis the writ jurisdiction, I'm talking about this. So now we have established 32-226. Anybody has any issue in that? This is something which you may know, should know. If you are preparing for UPSC, this is the standard thing which you would know, which is writ jurisdiction 32-226. Anybody has any issue here? No, sir. Now comes the second part of the story. I'll bring everything together again into one slide as a way of a mind map. Don't worry. Now starts the drama and the issue concerned. See, we know that ED has been established under Section 36 of FEMA 1999. There was a notification which came in June of 2000, which created the ED. Now, the problem here is states argue that this is not enough to create it as a statutory body, whilst the ED would say that I am a statutory body. Therefore, what they have to establish is ED's legal status and its power to use a writ. Now, how did this question come about? The question came about because of a gold smuggling case which happened in 2020. This happened at in Kerala, 30 kgs of gold worth 14 crores was seized, and the NIA used the UAPA Act and ED used the PMLA Act and Money Laundering, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. And the person who was accused in this alleged that the ED wanted her to take the names of very high officials within the state government. And because Kerala has a non center government, there was a lot of political vendetta, which was in a way expected, assumed, and a lot of hue and cry happened. Now, the state government established a commission of inquiry checking the modus operandi of what ED was trying to do. This is where ED moved to the Kerala High Court using Article 226, saying that we want you to squash this commission of inquiry under the concept of mandamus and certiorari, which is that it is not in the authority of the commission of inquiry to take the papers from us and analyze it. It is something where the right of the ED is being taken away. This led to a standoff between the state government and the ED, thereby saying that ED lacks the legal standing as it is just an extension of the union government as a department. As a department, it does not have the right to go for a writ petition. Maybe as a statutory body, it can. But here, the High Court of Kerala has established that the designated legal status of the ED is of a statutory body. Therefore, it can seek under 226 a writ jurisdiction. Now, this has been challenged. This jurisdictic or what is called as legal status, juristic entity or personality, the legal status now has reached the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, the argument is ED is not like SEBI, not like Reserve Bank of India. Therefore, it should not be allowed to use 226 or 32. Now, this issue is sub judice, but it creates a very interesting, you can say, precedence and a very interesting case for us. So, what is the core argument or what is the core concept embedded within this article? See, it's about writs, but it's also about legal status. Writ jurisdiction, we know 32 is for Supreme Court, 226 is for High Court. We also know that writ jurisdiction of Supreme Court per se is for fundamental rights, but for High Court it is beyond fundamental rights and beyond with regards to any form of legal remedy. Now, the legal status of a statutory body can use 226 to move for a writ petition. However, a department of the union government is nothing but the union government itself. Therefore, it can be not used for the concept of either 32 or 226. Now, the ED was created under the FEMA Act of 1999. Now, the question mark is when ED was created through a notification, an executive order, is it actually a statutory body or not? Now, ED, High Court of Kerala would say it is a statutory body. State governments would say that it is not a statutory body, it is just a department of the union government. And therefore, the question mark still remains. Supreme Court has to now establish, is the writ against the committee of inquiry of the Kerala government actually correct or not? Or is it just the very, you can say, liberal interpretation of FEMA and the concept of statutory body? Both articles have their own merits. First, gave us a lot of fodder for voter behavior. This has created a new interesting concept for us, wherein when it comes to writ jurisdiction, when it comes to writs per se, we also have this department versus statutory. Does this make sense? It's a heavy article has a lot of context for Tamil Nadu government and Kerala government politics that is of no purpose to us. What is more important is everything which is behind it per se. Yes, yes, Harsai, that is the whole point. Because ED is being considered as a department, it cannot be defined as the concept of a state itself. And more than that, what they're arguing is union government should go for it, not ED, because it is nothing but an extension of the union government. How does ED act? Does it act as a statutory body or does it act as a department of the government of India? These two things have to be decided. Because if it is a department of the government of India, it would then have to go to the union government and say that please put a writ jurisdiction vis-a-vis this the court of inquiry. But if it's a statutory body, then it can independently go to the High Court under 226 and do something like that. Does this make sense? Yes, no. Yes, sir. Himanshi, it's not about that the government body cannot go for writ petition. It is about that if, for example, I am the union government, my department can't go for writ petition. I would have to go for writ petition. HC is already decided it is a statutory. Himanshi and Harshay, the question is if the question is ED separate from the government of India or is it the entity of the government of India? This is how the question will also be very, very interestingly worded. See, ED is widely regarded as an instrumentality of the union government, prosecuting cases on its behalf rather than functioning as an autonomous legal entity. Comment. This is the question in the court itself. Misuse and all, snap life, that's a separate issue altogether. That is a different concept altogether. Here we are trying to establish, is ED an extension of the government of India as a department, or it is government of India and ED is an statutory body which was created by the government of India. If it is a statutory body, then 226 will come into context. If it is a extension in instrumentality of the union government, then the union government will go for 226, not statutory or government department. I hope you understand this. Very interesting question, can come in GS paper 2. It's about a government body, it's about governance, it's about writs. So GS paper 2, very interesting question. Again, needs a lot of context. By the time you are going to write mains, the judgment is obviously going to come through. So we would know if the Supreme Court also believes that this is the case and not this. We'll see what happens when the court gives the judgment. Okay. Now, first article gave us a lot of data with regards to voter behavior. Second article has now enlightened us about writ, the concept of 22632, with regards to the way statutory bodies have to be taken into consideration. Avantika, that is to be established. As of right now, High Court would argue, Kerala High Court, SEBI, RBI, ED, statutory. They are separate bodies. But state governments of Tamil Nadu and Kerala would say it is not a statutory body, it is a department of the union government. It is an extension of a ministry per se. That has to be established. Avantika, that is the question. SEBI is not in the question, ED is in the question. We can't, as of right now, it is correct, it is a statutory body. Definitively only when Supreme Court also reasserts or asserts the same, or on the contrary says that it is not true. Now, moving to the third article, I told you because the FTA has happened, so there obviously will be something related to the FTA. Now, this article, small editorial, deals with two very interesting things. It tells us the significance. It tells us the significance of what is called as this FTA per se. Again, learn, we don't have to, we are not the court here. We are not the court here. We have this, we will not establish this. This is the whole fundamental question. Is ED a statutory body or not? You are saying no, somebody saying yes, High Court says yes. Let's say if Supreme Court says yes or no. That is the whole question here. We can't come to that conclusion. Because that is because of the fact that the even West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, the ED has been used against these three governments quite a lot. ED's misuse creates this question, wherein ED's misuse has in turn led to these states to say that there is a lot of political vendetta and it's not a statutory body, it is acting in the name of what is called as the union government. Now, with regards to the FTA and its significance, there's very interesting, you can say 2 to 3 points which this article makes is that why is this FTA so significant? Is because though India has signed 8 FTAs before this, free trade agreements before, the the question is that previously all 8 used to account for 16% of India's total trade. EU itself, this FTA accounts for 12% in itself, 12% in itself, which is a very, very big thing. It's a very, very big thing because 12% of trade, one to one, is that way quite interesting. 8 FTAs we did, it was 16%. One FTA is 12% of all trade, is very, very significant. This is the first thing which is pointed out with the article, that India has been able to figure this out. At the same point of time, it is significant because we kept our agricultural sector, we kept our dairy and our interests intact, and we were also able to figure out the automobile sector. The phased out manner, though Mercedes has said that the prices will not go down, this and that, but the automobile sector was a bone of contention. Here, the article hails the fact that the government of India figuring this out in this political environment where a lot of conflict is there, conflict driven understanding is there, is very significant. So, when you are going to write any conclusion for an FTA question, I hope that you're going to use this. That is why I picked this article up, because it gives us direct understanding with regards to FTA and the significance of the FTA. So, before we move on to the next 4 articles, which are smaller prelims oriented articles, little bit of data here and there is important. We have to understand what we've done till this point. We've understood the significance of FTA with regards to the volume of trade. We understood ED or why ED is under question, 322226, and voting behavior being gradual change with structural robustness, along with that a constant number per se with regards to participation and people believing in the system itself also. If we are sorted with these 3 heavy articles, mains oriented articles, we will now transition to the smaller articles, interesting but not as heavy as what we've discussed. As I said, today's newspaper, again, weird, maybe the Hindu newspaper was anticipating the economic survey, which is also out. There's a session which Shams has already done. Tomorrow's newspaper will be dominated by the economic survey. That is why Shams is going to take it so that he can analyze all the articles talking about the economic survey data per se. So I hope that all of this is perfectly fine and all of this is all clear in your mind per se. Yes? Okay. Now, there's a very interesting development which has happened in the past 2 to 3 weeks, which is that, see, we know that UAE and India have shown interest in strategic defense partnership. Now, UAE and Saudi Arabia have been squabbling over Yemen, where Saudi Arabia would argue that UAE has been stoking anti Saudi Arabia sentiment within the Yemeni sector. And there's a lot of, you can say, friction between these two countries. Now, UAE and Saudi Arabia both are very important partners for us, but we also know that Saudi Arabia went into a defense partnership with Pakistan. Now, in the context of Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, India, UAE, Very interestingly, Saudi Arabia is now ready, though this dialogue third edition is happening, the security word has been used within the dialogue between India and Saudi Arabia. A letter of intent for strategic defense partnership with the UAE has in turn led to India Saudi Arabia also talking about security dialogue, a comprehensive review of security cooperation, and in this session, this third India Saudi Arabia security working group, in this there was a mention to the Delhi blast, there was a mention to Pahalgam, and both of these countries, India obviously, Saudi Arabia, condemned the terrorist attacks. This is very interesting because the Saudi, UAE, Yemen triangle and UAE, India, and Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, this quadrilateral is now becoming very interesting because now Saudi Arabia is also seeking partnership with India. That is because of this Yemen angle. And therefore, we have to see how this manifests itself concretely. But we are seeing a shift in the Saudi understanding. You can see that also in the way they are reacting to Trump and with regards to the board of peace which has been created and with regards to the Iran threats which are coming from US. US has been talking about attacking Iran. Saudi Arabia for the first time has backed out, is not giving very positive assertions towards that concept. So everybody is understanding that there is after Venezuela, Trump's ulterior motives are now becoming more and more clear. So very interesting article, not a very big one, very straightforward. But because of this triangulation, we now have a very interesting geopolitical situation where both our two very important partners vis-a-vis Pakistan are now on the table for security understanding. The Yemen angle is that within Yemen, the argument which Saudi Arabia is making is that the UAE factions are stoking anti-Saudi feelings, and there is border, you can say, movements and even attacks from the Yemeni side towards Saudi Arabia, which is being funded by UAE. Whilst UAE would argue that that is not the case, Yemen would the Saudis would argue that is the case. Yemen is already a battleground with regards to how different actors are funding different actors in this sector itself. So therefore, it's a very interesting position we are in, that we have Saudi Arabia also on the table. PDF of this analysis, we will make sure that it should have been uploaded in the main Telegram group. If it hasn't, we'll get it uploaded. Now, the next article which was there in the business section of the newspaper was IIP data, which is Index of Industrial Production Data, in which manufacturing, mining, and electricity hold one of the heaviest, you can say, weights in that regard with 809, so 29 and 1 item. Now, the data here is important. Generally, this data comes to us from time to time. We have to analyze that data per se. So, overall industrial growth under IIP, it has been argued that in December, the performance was 7.8%. This is a 26-month high, but highest was in October of 2023 with regards to 11.9%. But this has come through because of manufacturing, electricity, and consumer goods. Within that, manufacturing is showing 8.1% increase, which is much higher than what we saw last year in December 2024, and slightly below against November, and 8.1% for capital goods growth, which is again higher. Overall, what we believe is because of the GST rationalization and investment revival, because of that, in turn, a lot of capital has been infused. But this is the rider here. This momentum is also because of central and state spending. This is very important point. Lot of spending is happening from the center and state also. So that is where this capital infusion into the market is also public spending. So here you don't have to per se remember the data, but what you have to understand is what are the broader trends. Broader trends is vis-a-vis last year, we have we have robust development, not major decline with regards to manufacturing. Vis-a-vis last year, good development, 3.7 to 8.1%. If there is a certain case for trend based question. This is out because this changes month on month and year on year. You can say a comparison is there. So this data per se becomes used. So IIP, India, Saudi Arabia. Now we know that on 28th of January, Maharashtra lost a very important personality, statesman, and politician, Ajit Pawar, through a plane crash. A lot of questions are there. Is it sabotage? Is it something like that? But there was a very interesting creative which was there in the Hindu newspaper. All of these personalities generally become important and maybe will help you in contextualizing things. Whoever you see on this slide, all of these important personalities died through some form of air crashes. For example, one of the most known, celebrated, and recently also recreated, Homi Bhabha, who is the father of nuclear physics and nuclear technology in India. We lost him to an air crash in 1966. Then the Union Minister died in 1973. Thereafter, we have Sanjay Gandhi, who himself was a pilot. He died in 1980. Very important personality generally. Then we have NVM Somu, the Union Minister of Arunachal Pradesh. He passed away in 1997. Then we have Madhav Rao Scindia, 2001. Again, very major loss to Maharashtra politics in that regard. Then Lok Sabha Speaker in 2002. Thereafter, we have YS Rajshekhar Reddy, the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister in 2009. Again, major loss to the Indian, you can say, armed forces. General Bipin Rawat, who died in a helicopter crash in 2021. One of the last major, you can say, personalities to die was former Gujarat CM Vijay Rupani. Now Ajit Pawar, Deputy Chief Minister of Maharashtra, now dies in a plane crash. Now, what do you do with this information? It's a separate issue, sir. But you should be conscious of this that he's not the first, and we have lost multiple important either union ministers, chief ministers, and even generals to these forms of plane crashes. And therefore, you should have this data with you handy if needed for a state PCS level based. You don't have to remember the years, but you should know what is common link between all of these men, because there could be a question in any state PCS per se where they can give you these four names and say what is common, which is untimely death through plane crash. So interesting data per se given by the Hindu newspaper. Now, before I move to the last two topics, are we all on the same page? Everything is perfectly fine? All good? All perfectly fine? Yes? Okay. Now, there was some form of red tapeism which existed within the pharmaceutical industry, wherein if you wanted to create an experimental drug, if you wanted to create some form of, you can say, non narcotic drug, and you wanted to experiment, you had to get prior permission and license from the government of India and the Ministry of Health. Now, in order to make ease of doing business better, the ministry, Union Health and Family Welfare Ministry, has notified and diluted and amended new drugs and clinical trials rules of 2019, thereby saying that there is no need to get a test license from the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, CD, CSO. Rather, you can, for analysis purpose, for research purpose, for examination purpose, prior intimation mechanism can be used, and no license is needed for non-commercial manufacturing of chemicals for trials. So therefore, what will happen is you can now just intimate to the CDSCO that we are going to produce this in for this purpose, and that is good enough through online submission for testing. Other than drugs which are considered to be too dangerous for this type of testing, it is believed that this may reduce the processing time from 90 days to 45 days, which will allow for further R&D in pharmaceutical sector. So now you don't per se need a test license. You can just intimate by email that we are going to do this, and you can submit an online intimation to the organization. Simple, straightforward, interesting. Then The last is again something where government is trying to streamline things and remove red tapeism. As of right now, if you wanted to set up an industrial unit, which is not big one, but small scale or even a proper industry per se, from the environment ministry, there's a new intimation that for the different forms of, you can say, permissions which were needed under the Air Act, Water Act, Waste Management Act, different permissions were needed. 5 to 6 permissions were needed. That was in turn leading to a lot of delays. Now a single application has been created. When you apply for a permission, it will automatically give you permission under all three, and therefore will allow you to not apply to each and every state pollution control board, central pollution control board, ministry, all of that. One single window, within that, one single application, and automatically you will get permissions within all concerned acts. That was quite interesting that the state, the, you can say, the Ministry of Environment is trying to make sure that there is no form of delays per se in the process of industrial expansion. So when we set out to discuss the Hindu newspaper today, we had 8 articles in our focus. The first article deals with how voter behavior has been there in the past, you can say 2014 to 2024, the robustness of the turnout, female participation, voter believing in the system, and generally the fact that they take independent decisions. Second, we try to understand what is 32.226 ED's position with regards to statutory understanding. Third article, we try to understand how this FTA is very important because 12% of our exports is based, or our trade is based on EU only. Fourth, we understood the air crashes and important personalities which we lost to it. Fifth, we were able to understand how the government of India is now easing this licensing regime with regards to testing. Sixth, we tried to understand how now there is, for green consent, there is no need for separate application in each and every case. And we also understood the IIP data which has come. So I hope that all these 7 articles are totally clear to you. And I hope that you will watch the session on the economic survey, and also tomorrow's newspaper with regards to economics. Have Sham sir analyzing it at 5 p.m. only. Thank you. Take care and bye bye.